we're looking to really change the world with our technology. The market opportunity for Succinct, or anyone in ZK, really far exceeds and goes beyond crypto, right? The cryptography goes beyond crypto. And we've released some interesting pilots and proofs of concepts in industries that have nothing to do with crypto or even our own subject matter expertise. Oh, the event's great. I love coming here. You guys pull an international audience too, which is wild, to get people to travel to Long Island for a couple of days.
Hi, so I'm here with Trunzo from Succinct. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Right, so you started a menswear shop in New York City. You were in fashion, then Succinct happened. How has the journey been, and which has been harder to traverse?
Oh, wow. Really talk about origin stories. I guess even before that, I started my career as a regulatory attorney. Fashion was a passion project for me. I could no longer be a regulatory attorney. I needed more professional nourishment. So I really cut my teeth for a decade in the fashion industry. And at some point across that journey, I became fascinated with crypto. Ethereum killed in 2017, and it took me a couple of years to find my footing, and I ended up at Polygon and led the global business development team there for a while before coming to Succinct. And when looking at the difficulties of working in any environment, I mean, every environment's a little bit different. The most difficult thing about running a fashion business is it is extremely competitive, and there's not nearly as much capital in it as there is in tech, specifically crypto. So I often think about, some of the budgets that we have in crypto to do nice things like this, right? It just doesn't exist in the fashion industry. So in some ways, it's a lot easier to operate in this environment. But in some ways, the stakes are much, much, much higher. We're looking to really change the world with our technology, both at Succinct, but more generally in crypto. I think that's why a lot of people work in crypto. And with higher stakes comes a different kind of competition. And while you may have more resources to accomplish what you're doing, you're trying to accomplish more. And it's just quite difficult. So.
Right. So let's talk about Succinct and ZK proofs, right? In the last 2 years, we've seen a proliferation of AI tools, and I guess it's getting really difficult for the common man to, or any of us, to be honest, to differentiate between AI content and human created content, right? What role do you think ZK proofs play in that? Also, what role does Succinct play in that?
Yeah, so before answering that question, maybe just a quick statement about ZK proofs. Our ZK VM, zero knowledge cryptography, allows one to run any general computation and prove that it was run correctly, that the output is true, without revealing any underlying information. And we found product market fit in crypto with Ethereum, with rollups, ZK rollups, which a lot of your audience, I'm sure, has heard of or maybe has used or understands deeply. Having won a large portion of that market, we look to see where else ZK could be applied. And one place is precisely here with AI. With the proliferation of AI, there are huge barriers to trust and huge problems with trusting agents, trusting outputs, trusting that, agents or models were trained on the data that they say they were trained on. This is a nascent field in trying to apply ZK to these ideas. And frankly, it is still extremely early and quite expensive to use the technology to do those sorts of things. But we are pacing towards a world where we believe that the cost will come down, and that every agentic transaction that you are a part of, either directly or indirectly on the internet, will come with some sort of ZK or cryptographic proof that the agent was authorized to do certain things or was trained on a certain set of data, or even simply that its outputs were computed properly.
Do you think this will also have an impact outside of the crypto or the finance industry, just like ZK proofs and the work you do?
Yeah, for sure. That was one of the things that was most attractive to me about Succinct and ZK more generally. Again, I touched both Succinct and ZK from my time at Polygon and Mantle, both of whom are customers of Succinct to this day. So I had a fairly decent understanding of the technology before I arrived. And one of the things that was super interesting about the technology is that it's not necessarily beholden to or tethered to crypto. It just so happens that the first product market fit really for the technology was for rollups to inherit security from Ethereum. The market opportunity for Succinct, or anyone in ZK, really far exceeds and goes beyond crypto, right? The cryptography goes beyond crypto. And, we've released some interesting pilots and proofs of concepts in industries that have nothing to do with crypto or even our own subject matter expertise. So earlier this year, we had released an SDK and a consumer-facing app called Zcam using cryptography to prove that an image was taken on a certain device. You could attach identity to it as well, that it wasn't altered. So instead of hitting up Grok on Twitter, hey, at Grok, is this real? Which is just, there's an asymmetric advantage to attackers, right? Like it's much easier to sort of like create something that's fake than to prove that it's real. So we prove that it's real as opposed to detecting whether it's fake, which is just a losing game.
Can you speak about that more? Like how does that work? Like, and what do you think the future of that is going to be? Like, is it going to be with applications? Do you think like applications in general, like social media tools tomorrow, they're going to also like have this philosophy of trying to prove something is human? And do you think like Succinct will play a role there?
Yeah, it was definitely a pilot and a bit of discovery for us. So, our thesis was that eventually at some point interests will align for users, but also for platforms and commerce companies to provide some level of assurance, proof that images are what they say they are. Like we think eventually that necessarily has to happen. On what timeline, we don't know. We think cryptography is the best way to do it. There are less durable forms of this right now, like watermarking and things like that. I think anyone working in this space is doing God's work. This is like a novel thing to tackle. We think cryptography is the best way to do it. But it all depends on incentives for these companies. These are billion plus, even $1 trillion companies. This is just one of the many problems that their, trust and safety, fraud, and user experiences teams have to deal with, right? So early days, we see a future where proof of reality, essentially, to use like big, visionary terms, I guess, we're proving what's real, right? I think we necessarily have to get there. And much like most tech, right? Like we will get there when we're no longer talking about it, when it's just under the hood and it's just there. Yeah.
All right, last question. How are you finding the event?
Oh, the event's great. I love coming here. I'm a big fan of Long Island generally, both the North Fork and the Hamptons specifically. So yeah, coming out here, and it's a high touch audience. You guys pull an international audience too, which is wild, to get people to travel to Long Island for a couple of days. Pretty much executive only. Really, really a great room to be in. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much, Brian. That was
My
great.
pleasure. Yeah.